Today on the podcast, I'm talking with Neri Webster. She's based in Australia, and at her heaviest, she weighed nearly 300 pounds, or 135 kilos for our global audience. Her weight eventually forced her to leave her job. She then had a newer bariatric procedure called the Mini-Gastric bypass, and she opens up about the challenges she faced both before and after surgery. In this conversation, we cover a lot of ground, including how she shifted her focus towards health instead of just weight loss, the struggles of long-term weight maintenance, and prepping for skin removal surgery. She also opens up about how she tragically lost her husband to addiction transfer after his own surgery. It's a vulnerable and powerful conversation about resilience, growth, and the importance of asking for help. So let's jump in. So Neri Webster, welcome to Keeping It Off.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't you, for those of us who are just meeting you, why don't you give us just a big picture of your weight loss journey, and then we'll dive into more specifics after that.
Yep. So in 2021, the day before my 30th birthday, I decided to have a weight loss surgery. I ended up going for the mini-gastric bypass. The reason I did that mostly was just, I said to my surgeon, I just want one. Just one surgery. I'm not having a revision. Give me the best one. That's what he did. My heaviest weight was 135 kilos, and I've got my lowest was 58. I've since started exercising, building some muscle. So now I'm around the 60 kilo mark.
Got it. Okay. And you're based in Australia,
Yes,
which is,
Sydney.
it's very cool how we got connected. I think it was over Reddit. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
Awesome. There's some awesome Reddit groups on bariatric surgery that are very supportive and have a lot of information. So I think that's where we got connected, which is really cool. So just to convert for my American audience, so 135 kilos, you were around 300 pounds at your heaviest, and then you said your lowest was 58.
58. Currently
Okay.
around 60.
Right. Yeah. So about 127, 130 pounds. Just to convert for for some reason we're still not on the metric system, but maybe one day. So tell us about sort of your early maybe upbringing. Did you always struggle with your weight, or was it something that you sort of just started struggling with as an adult?
I struggled with my weight from about 10 years old, 9 or 10 years old. So primary school, I did have periods in, I think it would be junior high for you guys, where I was a normal weight, but I still wasn't very healthy. I try not to blame my parents for much, but I feel like one of the things that they did impart in me was basically food to cope. So whenever there was anything was difficult or I was stressed, I would eat. And then also for comfort. That's how my mum and I bonded. She was a bigger lady as well. She has since lost some weight as well, which is lovely. But that was how we bonded. And I had taken that into other relationships as well. So over the years, basically my weight just grew and grew and grew, pretty much to a point where I had a physical job working at a casino, dealing the table games, and I just couldn't do it anymore because my body was so big and it was too hard.
Right. Now, did you have other attempts at losing weight before you decided to have bariatric surgery, and what was that process like?
I had tried everything. Everyone feels like they've tried everything: calorie counting, exercising, keto, vegan, vegetarian, but there is just so much out there. And when you don't have a basic understanding of health and wellness, it's very easy to get lost. And obviously none of them were successful. Usually it's the same old yo-yo sort of thing. You would lose 5, gain 10, and it would just keep going like that. So I think eventually I just sort of gave up and was like, oh, well, this is my fate. I'm a bigger person. That's just how my life's going to be.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. I also years of yo-yoing up and down. And at some point, I had a really large weight loss. I think I lost 120 pounds just with diet and exercise. And then COVID hit. I regained all of it plus another 50 pounds. And there was just so much shame and so much, regret and just beating myself up. And it was, I think, at that point where I just sort of said, well, I'm just going to be overweight the rest of my life. And that's just what I have to accept. So what was it for you that got you out of that cycle of just yo-yoing up and down and even losing hope?
I think the real thing that made me realize I have to do something was when I had to stop working, because then that's when I felt like I was a disabled person. I wasn't able to have a normal life. That's when I really realized I have to do something about this, because I don't want this to be my life forever.
Yep. Totally understand that. Can you talk a little bit about coming to terms with the idea of bariatric surgery as a method for weight loss? Was it hard for you to accept that that might be an option, or after you tried all these other things, did it seem like just the next step?
It was very hard to make the decision. I had considered it on and off for quite a few years, through COVID as well. I was thinking about it. I bounce a lot of ideas off my mum, and, we would sort of discuss it. And of course, she was afraid for me to have a surgery, and I was myself as well. But it just got to the point where it was the only option, and I had to be prepared that it will either end my life or improve my life. And I had to be okay with that. I felt like I was so unhealthy that perhaps I wouldn't make it through the operation. And I don't know if that was just my own fear. It's doesn't happen very often that people don't make it through bariatric surgery. Like, it's very, very uncommon. Usually, people would be twice my size and 600 pounds and all that sort of stuff. So it wasn't likely, but it's a piece that I had to make with myself. And then, eventually one day I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I went and saw a surgeon. I was living in on the Gold Coast at the time in Queensland. Actually, I had to go to my GP first. I was actually very lucky that she herself had a VSG, the bariatric sleeve. And I said to her, I want to lose weight. She actually said, have you thought about surgery? I said, yes, give me a referral.
Right.
And that's how I found my surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
It was her surgeon. She referred me to him, and it was a matter of, I think, a couple of months. And then I got in that way. I was lucky that I did have private health insurance. The system is a little bit different to the States. We have public health and stuff like that, but I didn't qualify for that. So I did have to have private health insurance. And then I was still about 10,000 out of pocket as well.
Mm.
Like, I would do it 10 times over if I had to, looking back.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned that you had the mini-gastric bypass. I think that's not a surgery that is super common. So can you talk a little bit about what made you choose that surgery and what are some of the differences between other bariatric procedures?
Yeah. So the mini-gastric bypass is a single joint. The Roux-en-Y, which is the most common, I think, when you think of a gastric bypass, people think of the Roux-en-Y. There's two joins in the Roux-en-Y, and the pouch is ever so slightly smaller, is my understanding. With the mini bypass, it's sort of a mix between the sleeve, which they only cut your stomach in a sleeve shape, and the Roux-en-Y. So it's a sleeve with a little bit of bypass. The studies have shown that it is just as effective as the Roux-en-Y with regards to long-term weight loss. But as I said, I was pretty scared. And I think that the risk having one join rather than two In my mind, less risky, less chance of, you know, things not being joined correctly, stuff like that. So that's the reason that I did choose that one. Um,
Mhm. I know that one of the big differences between like a Roux-en-Y bypass and a sleeve or some of the other procedures is there's like no NSAID medications and you need to be aware of that. Is that the same for the mini gastric bypass?
Absolutely. Yeah. So no, yeah, the NSAID or whatever it's called, NSAID, Nurofen, we call it here. No
Okay.
Nurofen, but you can still have things like your paracetamol and stuff like that. The other thing is you do still get dumping syndrome. I'm 4 years out. I still do get dumping syndrome. I see it as a positive for me, simply because everyone likes ice cream. I still like ice cream, but it makes me so, so ill. So that is one of the reasons why I've been able to just completely get it out of my life. If I eat too much sugar, if I eat too much carbohydrate at one time, again, that does make me dump as well.
For someone who's not familiar with that, can you just talk a little bit about what dumping syndrome is and what I know it's different for different people, but what has been your experience with it?
So my experience with it is called late dumping. Late dumping is hypoglycemia. So you have too much fat and sugar. Your body releases insulin to counteract that spike, but then it moves through your system so quickly because it's not touching a portion of my small intestine because it's been bypassed. So then I have too much insulin, not enough glucose. So I get sweats, shakes, my heart races, and I just feel very, very unwell for a small period of time. Usually, the way that I counteract that is to eat something because then I need to increase my glucose and it just becomes like a vicious cycle because
Mm,
then I eat,
right.
then I dump, then I eat, then I dump. So I just stay away from all of that. If I have the tiniest bit of ice cream or anything, I pretty much get sick straight away.
Mm.
And I just, yeah,
It sort of acts as negative reinforcement in addition to obviously restricting your body. You can't eat as much.
hmm,
And hormonally, you get the benefit from surgery, but now you're also getting this negative reinforcement of any foods that are particularly bad or particularly,
exactly.
maybe troublesome that kind of helps you stay away from them.
Yeah, very helpful. That's exactly right.
Got it. Can you talk a little bit about the surgery, sort of pre-surgery and then post-surgery, like your experience? What was it like for you? Was it more difficult than you expected, or just talk about that?
The surgery itself, I was excited because I had made that peace with myself that, do or die, basically. I can either die on the table or I can die slowly and miserably being so obese or overweight. Um, so I was excited for the surgery. My mum came to visit. She looked after me afterwards. As I said, I got the surgery the day before my 30th birthday. So I spent my 30th birthday in hospital. It was 2 days at the private hospital on the Gold Coast, and my mum stayed with me the whole time. My husband as well had the sleeve, vertical sleeve. He had his surgery about a month before I had mine. He had different difficulties than I did. I healed very well from the surgery. I healed really quickly. I was, up and walking. I didn't have really crazy gas pains or anything like that. It was really easy. I think the fact that in my mind I'd come to terms with it not going to be easy, I was prepared for the worst, and then it ended up not being that bad at all. So, little mind trick, I guess I played on myself inadvertently, but I'm glad my mum was there because, like I said, my husband, he'd had his sleeve. He was not really in a place to be very supportive. So, my mum was helping me out there. I was in hospital for a couple of days. Then I went home. As I said, I hadn't been working anyway. So time off work, like, wasn't a thing. I was always off work. But probably only took a couple of weeks before I was sort of back to normal, eating pureed foods, but normal.
Makes sense. I didn't know that your husband had also had the sleeve. Do you want to talk about, was that a process that you guys went through together in terms of deciding to have bariatric surgery? And do you want to touch on that at
Yeah.
all?
Yeah. So I had decided to have mine. I basically just told him this is what I'm going to do. And then he started looking into it for himself. He'd never really thought about it, I don't think, until I had brought it up and made the decision and discussed it with him. He decided to have the VSG. We decided for him to go first because he had like the more simple operation. So he had a history of drug use, and mental health was a big thing for him. He, unfortunately, while I was in recovery from my surgery, he had relapsed and was using my pain medication for himself. That was very difficult to cope with right after surgery, but that's life.
I'm sorry to hear that. I know that it's very, very common to have addiction transfer after bariatric surgery. I think to some extent many or most of us have unhealthy relationship with food, and we use it as an addictive substance. And then when you're physically restricted from having food, it's very, very common to have addiction transfer. Yeah.
Yeah, I've experienced that myself as well, like not to any massive extent like that, but I can sometimes, I'm quite self-aware. So I'll be like, oh, I've been drinking every weekend, drinking alcohol. Then I sort of nip that in the bud. Or then I'll be, vaping and then realize, oh, no, I need to stop that and nip that in the bud. So I think it's very real. People don't just get to the size that I got to because they like food, because it tastes good. Food tastes good for everybody. It's something else. I don't know what, but yeah, addiction transfer is very real. I might add a little to that story.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I don't mind if you put it in the podcast. So he actually ended up passing away.
Oh my gosh.
He had his VSG. He relapsed. He was good for, I would say, 2.5 years. He didn't lose as much weight as I did. And I think he struggled with that. He was still a bigger guy. And then he saw me kicking all these goals. And I think that was difficult for him. He then went and got a revision to bypass, but then he relapsed again and it was much, much worse. So the addiction transfer is very, very real. He OD'd April last year or May last year.
Oh my gosh.
So that's why it was very real for me that the surgery, not that the surgery killed him, but I don't think he was quite ready and it didn't end well. So you really have to, if it's something that you're considering, make peace that it might not go well. But if it does, then your life is going to be so much better. And you just have to be willing to take that risk because it might not be the surgery directly. It might be addiction transfer. It might be mental health issues. Things can happen. And yeah, anyway, just sorry.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm so sorry to hear that.
That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super tough. I'm curious if you're comfortable talking about it, like if someone is considering surgery and they do struggle with either mental health or, addiction, they're worried about addiction transfer. What would you say to them?
Make sure that you have a plan and make sure that you have support. The first time we went in, we didn't really have a plan. I had concerns that, you're on pain medication, opiates after surgery. Um, he didn't seem that concerned when in reality he should have been. And I hadn't lived through it at that point. Like he was clean when we got together, and that was my first experience of him having a relapse afterwards. So I didn't really know what I was in for. If I did, then I would make sure that we had the right supports in place with an awareness that this can happen. And I think it would have been a better outcome. So don't think that it's going to be fine. Think it's not going to be fine, and have processes in place to make sure that things are fine.
Yeah, that makes me think of, I know when I was at sort of my heaviest weight and really like lost hope and looking for inspiration, I looked at these before and after pictures online that I saw of people, sort of at their heaviest and then after losing all this weight. And I imagined myself, one day getting there, and I thought, like, this person, it must have been not easy, but like this must have solved all their problems. And I guess for you, now that you have that before and after picture, would you say, like, what are the gaps that people don't see? What are the things that they just look at your after picture and think, wow, this must have, all of her problems are solved and this must have been such a great easy journey for her? What would you say to that?
In some ways, it was easy. I don't feel like I'm super special. I think, and I don't want to be like, if I can do it, anyone can do it, because that's just bullshit when people say that. In some ways, it was easy. In some ways, it was really, really difficult. My whole mindset had to change. My whole personality changed. It's not just my body that's changed. I look at photos of myself back then and I don't even recognize myself. And it's not because I look different, it's because I see myself differently, if that makes sense. Because when you look at a photo of yourself, you can see how you felt that day. You remember the day that that photo was taken and how you were feeling. The hardest thing has been, though, to make the decision that I don't want to be like this anymore. Once you make that decision, that is the hardest step. It does get easier. Like I said, it's easier to cope with your problems. Your problems will not go away. My problems probably multiplied. But because I'm healthy, because, my mind is strong, I've been able to cope with these things and not just spiral out of control.
Yeah, that's that's awesome. Can you talk a little bit about how your relationship with food had to change as a result of surgery? Obviously, we know surgery, you're physically restricted. You can't eat a certain amount of food. There's also hormonal benefits because your hunger hormones change. And there's a malabsorption piece, I think, to both of our surgeries where we're not absorbing all of the calories that we take in. But obviously, there's also a big mental aspect and emotional aspect to our relationship with food. So, what was that like for you going through that process?
Well, it's still ongoing, really. And I go through phases as well, still 4 years out, even after, you know, having 2 years of weight loss and then 2 years of keeping it off. It's still an ongoing process. From then till now, there's a stark difference between how I approach food. Now it's very much as fuel so that I can run better, I can exercise better, I can lift better, I can feel better during the day, I can work better. my mental health is better. Um, but going from using it to cope every single day to not being able to use it at all was quite difficult, especially going through a difficult time at the time of surgery as well. But you just don't have a choice. And I think that was good for me to have that choice taken away, because I know that I would have chosen food. I think going through the different post-op stages of eating as well is very, very helpful to help change your mindset around food. You can't just have the surgery and then go back to eating burgers and chips. You have to go through different texture stages of eating. So you start with pureed food, basically just, you know, protein shakes or smoothies, soup without chunks. Then you go on to soft food. I would have beans mashed up. Um, you can't even eat things like tuna, for example, even though it's quite soft, flakes can get stuck and stuff like that. Even things like scrambled eggs. Some people do really well with scrambled eggs. I couldn't eat scrambled eggs for about, I would say, 9 months after my surgery, because my stomach just, there was something about the texture it just didn't like. And that helps shift your mindset around food. I basically had to eat like it was my job, just having a little bit at a time. And same with drinking water as well. Very important to stay hydrated. Very difficult to stay hydrated as well when your stomach can only hold so much. So yeah, you're basically like sipping a protein shake, drinking water.
Hmm.
um, but yeah, it definitely helps shift your mindset. Like I said, now food is fuel. Do I still like chocolate, ice cream, all that sort of stuff? Yes. But I don't see it as emotional support. It's not emotional support chocolate anymore.
That's huge. So, what role did exercise play in your journey? When did that start for you, and what is it? What has it morphed into?
It's only started recently um, with actual intentional exercise. When I was bigger, obviously they say, eat less, move more. Moving more, it hurt. Exercise is not fun when you're 300 pounds or 135 kilos. Your joints hurt, your knees hurt, your ankles, you swell up. It's just not fun. And so I feel like that had put me off from exercise for a very long time. On and off, I would, you know, do a couple of yoga classes at the gym or something like that. But it was never a habit. Probably in the last 6 months, I would say, since I decided to have my skin surgery, the surgeon said people heal better when they do exercise. So I said, right, that's what I'll do. And so I've started running light body weight exercises, not massive, but it's something that I want to do going forward after my skin removal surgery, because it feels good now. It doesn't hurt anymore. My knees don't hurt. My ankles don't swell. You're actually supposed to enjoy exercise, and it's not supposed to be hard on your body. It's not a punishment, but I always felt like it was until I'd lost the weight.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Totally resonate with that. So you mentioned skin removal. So obviously you have some excess skin after losing as much weight as you've lost. What was that process like? Were you afraid of loose skin going into it? And now that you have it, what is that like? And then what has the process been in looking into, having the removal surgery?
It was never something I was afraid of, having loose skin. I knew I'd have it because I had stretch marks. So typically, if you have stretch marks, you're going to have some skin laxity. Some of it will come back like in place, but not all of it. I've been very lucky. I don't have that much compared to some people who've lost similar amounts of weight. It really came about. It's always something I considered with skin removal, but I was just talking to one of my friends one day and I was we were discussing it. And they're like, "Why don't you just do it?" And again, it was just me being afraid. And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. Why don't I just do it?" And that's when I started looking into it. So I just needed that little extra nudge, to make that
Hmm.
decision. I, again, went to my GP. I said, "This is what I want to do. I need a referral." I got one referral. He said, "Oh, you should get two. Just get a second opinion. Always talk to two surgeons." I was like, "Yeah, okay." So he gave me another one for a different guy. I went to both. One of them suggested that I get really large implants. And I said, no. So I went with the other surgeon. So that has come up pretty quickly. My surgery is now, well, in a week. It was probably about 3 months of lead up time. So I had my initial consult with both of them. Then I had a second consult. I had a pre-op appointment a couple of weeks ago. And then after today, I'm going to go get my pre-op blood tests done for surgery next week. So yeah, 3 months of sort of waiting for it to happen, I
Right.
guess.
Well, best of luck on that. That's a
Thanks.
huge, huge deal. Obviously, you've already had bariatric surgery and you've recovered from that, but what does the recovery process look like? What are you expecting from recovering from skin removal surgery?
A lot of pain is my expectation. Specifically, I'm getting a 360 lift, lower body lift. So means I'm going to have an incision all the way around and then also a breast lift as well. So I'm basically just going to be sore everywhere. I'm not going to be able to stand up properly for probably 2 or 3 weeks. Rented a lift chair like old folks have, so they can stand up. They don't have to strain to get out of the chair. Again, my mum is coming to look after me. So bless her. It's going to be long, much longer, I expect, than the bariatric surgery. But I think at the same time, it's going to be easier because I'm healthier. There's not as much natural strain on my body from keeping me alive, essentially. Am working at the moment, so I'm lucky that my boss is allowing me to have 4 weeks off work. And the surgeon said you might need a little bit extra as well. So we'll see how we go. But yes, it's going to be a long recovery.
Hmm.
It'll be so worth it.
So I know some people decide they want to have skin surgery, other people decide not to. What was it for you that made it the right decision?
It was very much based on, in my mind, why not? I'm still young. Yes, it's expensive, both, monetarily and physically as well. It's not an easy surgery by any stretch of the imagination, but I've worked so hard to lose the weight and keep it off. And why not reward myself with just the icing on the cake? Is it
Hmm.
something that I could live with forever? Yeah, it's not that bad. If I had to live with it forever, then I would be totally content doing that. So if it's I would say to people, if it's something that worries them, it's not that bad. It's not as bad as being unable to work, look after your kids, all of that sort of stuff. It's not that bad. For me, it's very much a, hey, why not? I don't hate it. I I could absolutely live with it, but why not? Wear a bikini.
Hmm.
Finally.
Exciting. So we talked about weight loss. I'd love to discuss kind of weight maintenance. Is that a different process for you than losing the weight? And has it been hard? Has the surgery made it easy? What does that look like, maintaining the weight?
The surgery makes it easy to lose the weight. It doesn't make it easier to maintain. I find maintenance much more difficult, probably more mentally than anything. When you have been overweight for so long, even as a child, losing weight is always on your mind. You're always thinking about it. You put a lot of emotional energy into losing weight, um, when you're living it. When you've lost the weight, kind of, I felt a little bit lost because I put so much emotional energy into this one thing, which was weight loss. And so now I'm like, well, now what do I think about? Now what's my goal? So that has been quite eye opening for me, realizing how much energy I had put into it, even if it's, yeah, just thinking about it, emotional energy, always thinking about food. Whereas now my focus has shifted a lot more to health than weight loss. And how can I, now that I've lost weight, improve my overall health just by making little changes here and there.
So if you could go back and talk to yourself before you had the surgery, what would you say? What advice would you give?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, it's easy now that I know what the outcome's going to be. You know, don't be afraid. Just do it. Stop thinking about it. Just do it. But it's not that easy when you're at the start. Yeah. If I could tell myself, obviously, don't be afraid. It's all going to work out and you'll be just fine. That's what I would tell myself. But I know that it's not that easy at the start.
Yep, makes sense. What do you feel like some of the biggest things you've learned through this process? What would you say if someone just came up to you and said, "What's the, one or two biggest lessons you've learned over the past 4 years?" Anything come out to you?
Once you get past the initial difficulty, it it does get easier. For me, carbs, and I don't want to be like, carbs are the devil or anything like that, but they kept me hungry and they kept me fat. And the more you eat, the more you want, and you just never satiated. Nipping that in the bud, or stopping that, is really, really hard to get out of that cycle. Once you are out of that cycle, though, it does get easier. Um, and like I was saying about exercise as well, it's not supposed to hurt and it's not supposed to be a punishment. So it gets easier too. Your whole life becomes easier when you do lose the weight. They say, oh, well, losing weight's not going to make all your problems go away. And it doesn't. It definitely doesn't. But it makes them so much easier to cope with. That's been the biggest thing that I have learnt over the last 4 years.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk about, obviously, the number on the scale changed drastically. What are some of the things that you really enjoy about, like, what are the other changes other than the scale that you know, really appreciate about this change in your life?
My confidence. I am a totally different person than I was 4 years ago. Um, I'm happier. I'm nicer to other people because I'm not just hating myself all the time. Yeah, it's like my whole personality has changed. I'm in a completely different field for work. I'm in sales, so customer facing, like I basically have to sell myself, and I couldn't imagine doing that 4 years ago. There's no way. It's that old adage, like you can't love someone until you love yourself properly.
So at the beginning of our conversation, we both mentioned how there was a point that we had lost hope that we would ever be able to lose weight and keep it off and change our lives. Now that you have done it and you're on the other side of that, what would you say to someone who's in that same place, who's just sort of lost hope?
It's okay to ask for help. When people are bigger, society will look at you and say, you're lazy, you eat too much, you don't exercise enough. And they make it a personal failure. And it's not a personal failure at all. It's how the food industry is structured. It's how nutrition labeling is done. They allow so much added sugar in all of these foods and then market them as healthy. And they have people paid really high salaries to make you think that you're doing good for yourself, all the while you're actually not. So it's not a personal failure at all. It's a societal failure. And I don't want to say you're a victim, but you kind of are because you don't have control. So I would say ask for help if you're in that situation, because if you ask, there is help there. Not everyone, especially in the States, not everyone can get bariatric surgery, but there are other things that you can do. Educate yourself, even, go on YouTube and listen to some other people's stories and like exactly like this, and just give yourself ideas of how you can improve your health, not just lose weight. Um, but ask for help. If you need help, please go ask, because it's not you. There's nothing wrong with you. It's the the society and the environment in which you live, which has essentially caused you to be unhealthy.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm curious, what was that something that you realized through this process in terms of, I know for myself, I beat myself up a lot for being overweight. Is that a process that you had to go through to sort of forgive yourself in a way, and or let yourself off the hook in a way?
Probably something that I've realized now that I'm further out, and then looking back, like the wool has been pulled out off my eyes, because again, when you're in it, you don't realize it. But then when you don't partake in that, you can see it as an outsider, what is happening to people. And that has been more my journey towards health, that I've realized that, rather than my weight loss journey. But it's one of the things that helped me maintain my weight loss, realizing that a lot of food isn't really food. It's foods like stuff that you can sort of eat, but it's doesn't really give you energy and make your body fuel your body. It just tastes good, and then it makes you unhealthy. So is that really food?
So was there anything that we didn't get a chance to talk about? Any questions that you wish I would have asked you that I haven't yet?
I don't think so. I just hope that the answers that I've given to the questions that you've asked have been helpful, or have actually answered the question, because sometimes I go on rants and I forget what even the question was and I just keep talking. So I hope that I've been
Absolutely.
concise enough.
You absolutely have. You've been great. I
Thank you.
think your story has been really helpful. I'm sure it will resonate with a lot of people. And in terms of rants, I do the same thing, but it's with questions, so that's
Yeah.
even worse, I think. Like, just ask your question. I'm trying to do
Yeah.
I'm trying to do a better job of just asking the question rather than giving a whole soliloquy about my thoughts on a certain topic before I just ask the question. So I think we're wrapping up our time here. Is there anywhere that you would like to send people if they want to sort of follow along on your journey?
I don't have any socials at this point. I think people who do share their story, like, power to them, especially when they're going through it currently. I couldn't imagine doing that. So, yeah, no.
Okay, no worries. Well, we're from the time we're recording this to the time that it'll publish will be a few weeks. So if you decide to like start an Instagram or something and you
I'll let you
have
know.
have that, it'll be in the show notes. So feel free to we'll definitely push that out to whoever is watching and listening. So Neri, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I think your story has been really inspiring. It's definitely inspired me, and thank you for being vulnerable. And like obviously there's very difficult parts to your story, but I really appreciate when people just don't share like the shiny, wonderful parts, but the real parts, because like we all know this stuff is messy and it's real life. But really, really appreciate you being here, and hope you have a great rest of your day and good luck on your surgery.
Thank you very much, Joel. It's been a pleasure.
If you're still here, a few quick things before we end. If you found this content helpful or valuable and you'd like to support the show, there are 2 ways you can do that. First, you can help grow the audience by sharing this episode on social media, or even send it directly to a friend that you think would enjoy it. Second, you can leave a 5-star review on whatever podcast app you're listening with. If you'd like to be a guest on Keeping It Off, you'll find a link in the show notes to a simple form you can fill out, and I'll be in touch. One other note, this show is for information only, not medical advice. I'm not a medical professional, so please check with your doctor before making any changes in your healthcare. Okay, that's all for now. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you'll come back and check out another episode of Keeping It Off.